What happens when the moral fog of film noir drifts across Europe's post-war ruins? Picture empty streets wet with rain and a stranger lighting a cigarette under a flickering lamp. These aren't Hollywood stories. They're darker, quieter, and far more haunted. From France to Poland, from Britain to Italy, these thrillers reveal the continent's wounded conscience. Let's uncover 12 European noir-inspired masterpieces you can stream free right now. Number 12. Elevator to the Gallows, 1958. Before French New Wave found its rhythm, this film gave it its pulse. Louis Mallet's Elevator to the Gallows arrived like a thunderclap. It was daring, romantic, and utterly doomed. The story begins with a perfect crime. A businessman kills his boss to be with the boss's wife, but fate intervenes when he gets trapped in an elevator as the night closes in on Paris. The premise feels simple, yet Mal turns it into a study of destiny. The streets breathe menace. Miles Davis recorded the score in one night improvising while watching the film on screen. His trumpet echoes the sound of guilt itself. When it premiered, conservative critics attacked it, calling it immoral and corrupting youth ideals. The tension between elegance and decay was too much for them. The French censors almost banned its first run for portraying adultery without punishment. Behind the scenes, Jeanne Moreau defied studio demands for glamour. She walked through real Paris rain with no makeup, a rebellion against the artifice of the era. That realism electrified audiences. Today, Elevator to the Gallows is recognized as the bridge between noir fatalism and the modern age. Its jazz heartbeat still whispers through every lonely midnight walk in cinema history. Number 11. The Third Man, 1949. When Orson Welles stepped into the shadows of bombed-out Vienna, he became myth. The Third Man wasn't just a film, it was a mirror of Europe's conscience. Shot among real ruins, it tells of a pulp writer who arrives in Austria only to discover his friend Harry Lime has died, or maybe hasn't. The mystery deepens with every cobblestone. Welles appears midway smiling like the devil himself beneath the Ferris wheel lights. His charm and corruption made him unforgettable. Carol Reed's tilted camera angles made audiences seasick with suspicion. The shadows themselves became characters whispering about betrayal and occupation. British censors hesitated to approve it, fearing the portrait of post-war Europe was too bleak, too unflattering. Some scenes of black market trade and moral decay were nearly excised. The American distributors demanded a cheerier ending. Reed refused. Behind the scenes, the production was chaos. Filming in Vienna's real sewers nearly poisoned crew members. Welles refused to wade through water and demanded a double. Yet when he finally appeared, he delivered that immortal line about the cuckoo clock and civilization's rot. Its legacy never faded. Every spy thriller, every story about divided loyalties owes a debt to the third man. It still asks the question no one wants to answer. How far will friendship bend before it breaks? Number 10. Rififi, 1955. Jules Dassin made Rififi as an exile. After being blacklisted in Hollywood, he found himself in Paris broke, angry and desperate to create again. What he crafted became the blueprint for every heist film that followed. The story centers on a group of criminals planning the perfect jewel robbery. For 30 silent minutes, the heist unfolds with no dialogue, no music, only the sound of breath and metal. That scene alone changed cinema forever. But Rififi was more than style. It was a meditation on loyalty and doom. Dassin's own sense of betrayal bleeds into every frame. The criminals are craftsmen proud but cursed. When betrayal comes, it feels inevitable. French police unions demanded it be banned, claiming it would inspire real robberies. In some cities, screenings were halted after crimes copied the film's methods. Dassin shrugged, saying he just filmed life as it is. Behind the camera, the tension was palpable. He shot under fake names to avoid American blacklists. The studio didn't believe it would sell. Yet it became a sensation, winning Dawson the Best Director prize at Cannes. Decades later, filmmakers from Scorsese to Tarantino cited Rififi as gospel. It taught the world that silence could be louder than gunfire and that even the perfect crime ends in tragedy. Number 9. The Sleeping Car Murder, 1965. In the mid-1960s, French audiences were already obsessed with police procedurals, but The Sleeping Car Murder gave them something new, a noir that moved like a runaway train. Directed by Costa-Gavras before his political thrillers made him famous, it was both a mystery and a moral puzzle, set inside a cramped railway carriage hurtling through the night. The film opens with a simple crime. A woman is found dead aboard a Paris to Marseille sleeper train. What begins as routine investigation soon twists into paranoia. Passengers vanish, witnesses lie, detectives chase ghosts. The camera moves like the train itself, gliding through narrow corridors filled with secrets. When it premiered, critics called it too dark for mainstream audiences. French authorities were nervous about its depiction of bureaucratic failure. Police unions protested its cynical portrayal of the justice system. For a few weeks, it looked like it might be pulled entirely. But the audience response saved it. Viewers lined up for its realism, its claustrophobia, and the way it made every glance feel suspicious. Behind the scenes, Costa-Gavras was a perfectionist. He filmed the entire story on actual trains, refusing to fake motion or lighting. Actors performed while the cars rattled and screeched through tunnels, creating genuine unease. Crew members later described it as one of the most exhausting shoots of the decade. Today, the film stands as the missing link between French noir and the coming wave of European paranoia thrillers. It proved that evil no longer needed to hide in alleys. It could travel first class, right beside you. Number 8. The Man Between, 1953. Carol Reed returned to divided Europe after The Third Man and created another haunting vision of post-war dread. The Man Between begins in the ruins of Berlin, where suspicion lingers like radiation. James Mason plays Ivo Kern, a mysterious smuggler trapped between East and West, while Claire Bloom's naive Englishwoman is pulled into a world of moral fog. Audiences expected a spy thriller. What they got was a story about guilt and survival. Berlin's bombed streets and half-lit ruins speak louder than dialogue. The camera glides through corridors of rubble, revealing a city still bleeding from war. Mason's performance is one of quiet torment, a man who no longer believes in right or wrong, only in getting by. The British Board of Film Censors initially hesitated. The movie's empathy toward German civilians and its depiction of Allied corruption were seen as dangerous. Some theaters even refused to screen it, claiming it showed communists too sympathetically. Yet its raw portrayal of divided Europe made it unforgettable. Filming inside real East Berlin required secret permissions. Reed had to smuggle footage across checkpoints under diplomatic cover. Crew members were followed and interrogated by border police. The tension on set was real. The fear in actors' eyes was not staged. When the film finally premiered, critics were divided. Some found it too bleak, too slow, too painful. Others hailed it as poetry in shadow. Over time, its reputation grew. Today, The Man Between feels eerily modern, a warning about walls, both physical and moral, that never truly crumble. Number 7. The Girl with the Pistol, 1968. At first glance, The Girl with the Pistol looks like a comedy of errors, but beneath its bright surfaces beats a noir heart. Directed by Mario Monicelli, it tells the story of Assunta, a Sicilian woman who travels to England seeking revenge after being disgraced by a man who abandoned her. What begins as satire soon becomes a fierce study of freedom and identity. When the film premiered, it shocked Italian audiences. Its portrayal of a woman defying patriarchal revenge codes was radical. Religious conservatives called for bans, arguing that it mocked morality and encouraged rebellion. Several Italian provinces refused to screen it for months, but the international audience saw something different, a woman claiming control of her destiny within a culture built on shame. Behind the scenes, Monica Vitti was relentless. She rejected makeup during key scenes and insisted on performing dangerous stunts herself. Crew members remembered her walking alone through London's fog, refusing to break character even between takes. Monicelli said she turned what was meant to be satire into something mythic. The film won awards at Venice and earned Vitti international acclaim, yet it was quietly buried in Italy's archives for years. Only later did critics realize how subversive it truly was. Beneath its humor lay the spirit of noir, the trapped soul who fights not for love, but for self-respect. In retrospect, The Girl with the Pistol predicted a new Europe where justice was no longer masculine and vengeance could look like liberation. It remains one of the boldest transformations of noir's moral code ever filmed. Number 6. The Damned, 1969. Few films burned as fiercely through the conscience of Europe as Luchino Visconti's The Damned. On its surface, it was a family saga about a powerful German dynasty during the rise of Nazism. Beneath that surface, it was a fever dream about moral rot, the seduction of power, and the death of innocence. Every frame dripped with decadence, every smile concealed a lie. When it premiered, audiences were stunned. Critics called it blasphemous. Governments called it dangerous. In West Germany, screenings were heavily restricted because censors feared its portrayal of Nazi elites mirrored real industrial families still active in business. The Vatican denounced it. French moralists demanded cuts. Yet none of the outrage could erase its brilliance. Visconti filled the screen with theatrical grandeur. The family's mansion became a haunted mausoleum where betrayal replaced love. The dinner sequences were filmed with unnerving precision using real antique tableware from pre-war estates. Actor Dirk Bogarde later said the atmosphere was so oppressive it felt like they were living inside history's nightmare. Behind the scenes, tensions were volcanic. Visconti, a perfectionist aristocrat, clashed constantly with producers over the film's length and imagery. He refused to soften the ending in which the family destroys itself both morally and literally. Many crew members left mid-shoot, unable to handle the weight of his demands. Over time, The Damned transcended scandal. It became a monument to the sickness of power. Modern historians see it not only as political allegory, but as noir's European metamorphosis, the crime of complicity filmed with operatic cruelty. Watching it today feels like staring into a mirror that refuses to flatter. Number 5. Knife in the Water, 1962. Before Roman Polanski became a global name, he created a minimalist thriller so tense it barely needed dialogue. Knife in the Water is set almost entirely on a sailboat drifting across a Polish lake. 3 characters, a husband, a wife, and a mysterious hitchhiker, circle one another like predators in calm water. The story's simplicity hides layers of paranoia. The husband's arrogance, the hitchhiker's resentment, the wife's silent rebellion all merge into psychological warfare. Every sound of creaking wood feels like a heartbeat. Critics called it the first true Polish noir, not because of gangsters or guns, but because guilt and pride became weapons. When it debuted, the Polish government was uneasy. Officials accused Polanski of portraying the nation's middle class as selfish and decayed. The film's release was delayed for months, while censors debated whether it was unpatriotic. In the end, its success abroad silenced them. It went on to earn an Academy Award nomination and established Poland as a new force in psychological cinema. Behind the scenes, the tension was real. Polanski forced his actors to live aboard the boat during filming. There were no doubles, no stabilizers. Storms nearly destroyed equipment. The actress Jolanta Umecka said she was genuinely terrified during several takes. The realism came from exhaustion. Its legacy is immense. Knife in the Water redefined suspense for an entire generation of filmmakers. It proved that danger doesn't always need guns or dark alleys. Sometimes it's the silence between two people on open water that tells the darkest story of all. Number 4. Odd Man Out, 1947. Before The Third Man, there was Odd Man Out. Carol Reed's earlier masterpiece followed a wounded Irish rebel hiding through the alleys of Belfast after a failed robbery. It was the United Kingdom's first major noir, a collision of moral guilt and political despair that left audiences speechless. James Mason delivers one of his greatest performances as Johnny McQueen, the fugitive, whose night-long flight becomes a pilgrimage through betrayal and delusion. Every face he meets reflects a different kind of fear, the priest who won't lie, but won't help the woman who loves him, yet knows he's doomed the child who watches without understanding. The British censors nearly halted production, fearing it glorified rebellion. The studio worried about alienating audiences in Northern Ireland. Reed pushed forward, insisting that the story wasn't political, but spiritual, a man seeking meaning in a godless night. The tension worked. The film became a sensation in Europe, but was banned in some Irish cinemas for depicting rebels as human. Filming on wet cobblestone streets in freezing winter gave the movie its uncanny realism. The fog you see isn't artificial. Crew members recalled actors slipping on ice between takes. Reed's obsessive lighting turned every shadow into a moral question. When it premiered, critics called it Shakespearean in its tragedy. For decades it was lost under the shadow of The Third Man, but modern restorations reveal its raw beauty. Odd Man Out remains one of the most human noirs ever made, a reminder that guilt is the one wound that never stops bleeding. Number 3. Le Trou, 1960. Few films capture the geometry of despair like Jacques Becker's Le Trou. Released only weeks before the director's death, it tells the story of 5 prisoners plotting an impossible escape from France's La Santé prison. There are no dramatic music cues, no speeches, no villains, only men scraping at concrete hour after hour in silence. It's a meditation on freedom, filmed as pure physical labor. Audiences in 1960 weren't ready for its precision. The film's 20-minute escape sequence, shot in real time without music, became legendary. Every sound, a file against a pipe, a brick shifting a breath held too long, felt like suspense itself. Becker hired non-professional actors, including an actual former inmate who had participated in the real escape on which the story was based. When the French Ministry of Justice learned about the production, they tried to shut it down, fearing it would expose security weaknesses in the prison system. Censors demanded cuts to the digging sequences. Becker refused and secretly edited the final version in a private studio. The result was banned from several European countries for being too instructive. Behind-the-scenes filming was relentless. Becker kept his cast locked inside the recreated cell for 12-hour days to force authenticity. By the final week, the actors reportedly spoke only in whispers, even off-camera. When Becker died before release, his colleagues completed the final edit in silence as tribute. Decades later, Le Trou became the blueprint for all modern prison dramas. It stripped noir of glamour and replaced it with sweat and stone. Watching it today feels like touching the heartbeat of resistance itself, quiet, rhythmic, and unbreakable. Number 2. The Conformist, 1970. Bernardo Bertolucci's The Conformist remains one of the most visually stunning political noirs ever filmed. Set in fascist Italy, it follows Marcello Clerici, a man so desperate to appear normal that he becomes an assassin for Mussolini's regime. His crime is obedience, his weapon conformity. At its release, Italian conservatives called it treasonous. Bertolucci exposed how fascism didn't just rely on violence. It seduced through social order and moral cowardice. Censors demanded several scenes removed for their open critique of the church and state. Some screenings in Italy were raided by local authorities who saw the film as dangerous to civic morale. Behind-the-camera cinematographer Vittorio Storaro painted every frame with symbolic light. Cold blue for repression, golden warmth for illusion. Bertolucci insisted on shooting in real fascist-era architecture. The cast described the locations as haunted places where history still whispered. Actor Jean-Louis Trintignant said performing Marcello felt like drowning in elegance. During production, Italian press accused Bertolucci of glorifying totalitarian aesthetics. He countered that beauty itself was the trap, that fascism used art to disguise horror. The argument divided critics for decades. But modern scholars view the film as prophecy, a warning that moral collapse always begins with the fear of standing out. Its influence radiates through Coppola, Scorsese, and countless visual stylists. The Conformist is not just political cinema. It's noir as philosophical mirror where the detective's mystery is replaced by a question far worse. What if the villain is ordinary decency itself? Number 1. The Servant, 1963. When Joseph Losey and playwright Harold Pinter joined forces, they created one of Britain's most disturbing class dramas, The Servant. On paper, it's a simple tale. A wealthy young man hires a manservant. Slowly, the power shifts until the master becomes the slave. But beneath that reversal lies a study of corruption, psychological dependency, and quiet domination that tore apart British decorum. Critics in 1963 called it a moral grenade. The British Board of Film Censors fought over its tone, deeming it unwholesome. Some cinemas refused to screen it for fear of scandal. Losey, an American exile once blacklisted in Hollywood, poured his own bitterness into the film. Every scene pulses with suppressed rage against privilege and hypocrisy. Behind the scenes, the tension between stars Dirk Bogarde and James Fox mirrored the script. Losey pushed them toward discomfort, forcing long takes where silence did the violence. Pinter's minimalist dialogue turned every pause into a weapon. Crew members later admitted the atmosphere was oppressive, as if the house itself resented everyone inside it. Audiences left shaken. There were no heroes, only moral infection spreading room by room. For years, The Servant was dismissed as too cruel, too cynical. But its influence grew quietly, infecting later works from Performance to The Remains of the Day. Today, it stands as one of Britain's purest noirs. No gunfire, no detective, just two men locked in invisible war. Its legacy reminds us that the darkest crimes are not committed in alleys, but in drawing rooms where power smiles and obedience whispers. In every one of these European noir tales, the shadows aren't just on the streets. They live in the soul. Each film asks the same question: how far can we fall before calling it survival? If you felt the chill of these forgotten classics, subscribe, like, and tell us which one kept you thinking long after the screen went black.